January 14, 2025, started quietly on Rorer Street in Philly's Feltonville section. Noah Scurry walked out with his mom like it was just another school day. Then, a white Jeep Grand Cherokee crept into the alley, doors popped open, and suddenly the silence cracked under a storm of gunfire, shell casings clinking off the concrete while his mother screamed loud enough for the whole block to hear. By the time the smoke settled, a 17-year-old honor student and basketball star lay still on the ground. This wasn't random. This wasn't just another shooting. And the story behind it would pull you straight into two different worlds. Long before his name was whispered in the streets, Noah Scurry was just another kid in North Philadelphia trying to make the most of what he had. Growing up in Feltonville with his family, walking those same cracked sidewalks that have seen generations come and go, he found his early rhythm in school books and basketball courts instead of corners and back alleys. And if you ask the folks who knew him at Samuel Fells High School, they will tell you straight up he stood out for all the right reasons. At Fells, Noah had a 4.0 GPA and was pulling in the kind of test scores that made guidance counselors proud. He hit the highest SAT score in the school and put himself in the running for academic scholarships without even bragging on it. He was the kind of student teachers pointed to when they wanted to show younger kids what was possible. Respectful in class, never talking back, and always locked in on his work. That was the Noah they knew between those walls. On the court, he had the same focus, sliding into the varsity basketball lineup like he belonged there since day one. His jumper was clean, his defense was tight, and his teammates talk about how he knew how to run a play without the coach even calling it. The kind of player Division I scouts start looking at early, and some were already taking note by his junior year, with whispers about possible interest if he kept his numbers up. He wasn't loud or flashy about his talent, but you could tell he knew he had something, and the community saw it too. Parents who had kids at the same school would point him out when he passed, saying he was going to make it out, maybe even go pro or at least get that free college degree. He carried himself like somebody with a plan, like he could balance school, sports, and life without letting one drag the other down. Even outside of structured spaces like school and the gym, people noticed his discipline. He wasn't one to hang out on the block all day, and when you saw him with friends, it was usually in a safe spot, not in trouble. His principal, Melissa Rasper, later said there were never any red flags with him in the building. No signs of fights or conflicts, nothing to hint at what would eventually come out. By all accounts, Noah had the kind of story you could put on a brochure for the school district, honor roll, varsity starter, top test scores. The kind of combination most parents dream about for their kids, but what nobody outside of a small circle knew back then was that North Philly has a way of testing every plan you make. And Noah was growing up in a place where even the most promising paths can get crossed up without warning. In the early 2020s, Philadelphia was running some of its deadliest years on record, and that was the backdrop for Noah's teenage years. In 2021 and 2022 alone, the city clocked over 500 homicides each year, most of them shootings, and plenty of those victims were under 20. In some neighborhoods, you could hear gunshots more nights than not. And in Feltonville, folks learned to tell the difference between fireworks and live rounds without even thinking about it. Walking to school meant passing by fresh memorials, t-shirts printed with faces of kids barely old enough to drive, candles still burning from the night before. And for Noah, those weren't strangers. They were often people he knew by name, by laugh, by the way they played ball at the park. In 2020, 14-year-old Tamer Timms, an innocent bystander, got hit in the chest and back by stray bullets while hanging outside in Olney. And his mom told the news her son was just a regular kid who didn't deserve it. Noah knew that story because it was close to home. In 2021, another hit came when 16-year-old Kyrie Simmons was gunned down by 4 men while playing basketball at a West Philly recreation center. Noah had played ball with him, and seeing someone go like that on the same kind of court you use changes how you look at the game. Kyrie's brother said at the vigil that he didn't deserve to die like that, but in Philly, deserving doesn't always mean you get to live. Another friend, 18-year-old Hasir Adams, was killed not long after. And by the time those three had been buried, Noah had lost at least 6 friends to gun violence in about a year. That kind of loss piles up fast, and at some point it stops feeling like a freak accident and starts feeling like the normal rhythm of life. You go from shock to numbness, and sometimes from numbness to anger. Community activists like Dejani Talley were already saying youth felt unsafe, unheard, and ignored, with the gun violence rising no matter how many rallies or vigils were held. For a kid like Noah, the message was clear. In his city, even the so-called good kids could get caught slipping. And every time another name hit the news, that idea got reinforced. It was a war zone without an official name for it, and living through it meant making choices that sometimes had nothing to do with grades or talent. Little by little, the losses shifted how Noah saw the world, and the line between being a victim and protecting yourself got blurry. In places like Feltonville, survival isn't just about keeping your head down. It's about knowing that danger can come to you even if you're not looking for it. And the more friends he buried, the more it probably felt like playing it straight wasn't enough to keep you breathing. By May 2023, Philadelphia's gun violence had already taken several of Noah's close friends, and now it reached him directly in a way that would change him for good. On a spring night in the Frankfurt section of the city, the 4,600 block of Mulberry Street became the scene of sudden chaos when a car rolled up slow and then unleashed a barrage of gunfire toward a small group gathered outside. 3 teenagers were hit, and an older man, 66 years old, was killed where he stood. Noah was among the injured. His wounds missed major organs, and doctors called them non-life-threatening. Yet the emotional damage was something no hospital could patch up. When you walk away from a shooting and see others collapse beside you, your mind starts to rewrite every step you take. Paranoia becomes a constant passenger. You scan every street corner. You note each unfamiliar vehicle. You wonder who is watching you and why. And you replay the sound of each shot long after the street goes quiet. Noah began carrying a firearm after that night, not for show, but because he felt it might be the only thing standing between him and the next obituary. The idea that good grades, standout test scores, and a sharp jumper on the court could shield him from harm had already been fading. But getting hit himself erased that hope completely. Fear blended with anger, and that anger began feeding a readiness to act first. If trouble came too close again, those around him could see the changes clearly. He stayed out later, moved with more caution and calculation, and carried himself with a guarded edge that had not been there before. The boy they knew was slowly becoming someone new, shaped by a city where survival sometimes meant meeting force with force. In the months after the shooting, Noah began building a new image that would carry weight well beyond Feltonville. Drawing from Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, he connected with the character's mix of chaos, fear, and the way unpredictability could be used as power. If people on the streets already saw him as someone not to test, then he figured he might as well step fully into that role and control the narrative himself. He took on the name Joker OTV, with OTV said to stand for On the Villain, and he branded it across his social media presence. His early posts showed generic masks and face coverings, but before long he committed to the wide, eerie grin of the Joker mask. Often posing with firearms and surrounded by masked associates, each image and clip crafted to send a clear signal to a certain audience that understood without needing captions. Noah pushed into the drill rap scene with verses thick with coded threats and nods to real events that only insiders could untangle, weaving local slang with specific details, and filming videos in back alleys, shadowy basements, and familiar street corners. The guns always visible, the tone always calculated. These visuals drew eyes from rivals and law enforcement alike, and with each release his name carried a little more weight. Despite his growing persona, he kept the other half of his life polished, walking into Samuel Fells High School as the polite top-grade student who executed plays on the varsity basketball court and turned in assignments on time. His teachers saw focus and discipline, but in the digital space and in certain neighborhoods, he was becoming a figure with influence and presence. And each week, the distance between those two identities grew wider, setting the stage for what was to come. By late 2023, the tension in North Philadelphia between certain young crews was climbing to levels the city had not seen in years. And at the center of it were two groups with growing reputations, the Pavement Boys and Fast Break. The Pavement Boys were mostly teenagers from neighborhoods stretching across sections of Feltonville and Hunting Park. And while older heads in the area had been involved in street life for decades, this was a younger generation running their own plays, and their names started circulating in police briefings tied to shootings and armed robberies. Fast Break was their counterpart from another cluster of North Philly blocks, operating with the same mix of loose organization and violent reach. And the two sides were bound by geography, pride, and the kinds of grudges that rarely go away. The bad blood between them did not start with Noah, but by the time his name carried weight, the feud had already been stoked by several killings over the previous 2 years. Police records and local reporting tied both groups to retaliatory shootings that crossed into each other's territories, and those borders were often just a few blocks apart. A small disagreement over something like a stolen dirt bike or an insult in a basketball game could grow into full-on armed confrontations when the crew politics came into play. In this environment, teenage gunmen became more common, a shift fueled by easy access to firearms and the visibility of clout-driven violence online. Instagram lives, Snapchat stories, and YouTube uploads replaced old-school street corner gossip, letting threats and insults travel across the city in seconds. Videos would show masked figures flashing pistols, dropping names of rivals, and posting locations with just enough detail to provoke a response. This public stage gave every move higher stakes because each post dared the other side to answer in real life. Noah's role within the Pavement Boys was a subject of street talk long before any official source linked him to crimes. Rumors painted him as a hitter, someone willing to pull the trigger during a mission, and his drill rap persona, Joker OTV, only added to that perception. His lyrics hinted at specific incidents without spelling them out, and listeners who knew the streets could connect certain bars to real events. Every time a Pavement Boys video dropped with Noah front and center, or every time his handle tagged another member in a provocative post, it added fuel to the fire. Diss tracks became weapons of their own, with both crews recording songs aimed at humiliating the other. On these tracks, names were called, locations were referenced, and losses were mocked, often over beats that quickly went viral in local circles. The taunts were repeated in comments, reshared in stories, and dissected in group chats, giving them a life far beyond the initial upload. In this back and forth, each side was trying to prove dominance, not only in the streets, but also in the court of public opinion. And that meant the risk of violence was never far from the next video or post. On July 20th, 2023, the war between crews intersected with a tragedy that would grab headlines well beyond North Philadelphia. That day, at a mini market in the Olney section, a burst of gunfire left 25-year-old Devin YNG Cheese Spady dead and 2 other people wounded. Surveillance footage from the scene showed the suddenness of the attack. Suspects moving in quickly, shots fired, and the shooters gone before anyone could react. The killing happened in daylight, underscoring how bold these strikes had become. YNG Cheese was not just another name on the casualty list. He was the son of well-known rapper and podcaster Gilly the Kid, and he was building his own career in music. As part of the Mac and Cheese collective, he had been gaining attention for his work and for collaborations that hinted at a bigger future. His death sent shock through the Philadelphia rap scene and drew immediate attention from major media outlets. Police at first kept quiet about suspects or motives, offering little more than confirmation of the fatal shooting. On the streets, however, speculation started almost immediately. Word spread in certain circles that the shooting might be connected to ongoing beefs, and soon, Noah's name began to surface in hushed conversations. These whispers claimed he had been involved in the hit, not necessarily as the mastermind, but as one of the shooters. Months later, Gilly the Kid would publicly confirm what many in the streets had already been saying. In an emotional interview, he explained that police had told him Noah was a prime suspect in his son's murder. According to Gilly, detectives shared this information only after Noah was dead, suggesting that charges might have been on the horizon if he had lived. Gilly's comments added weight to the street rumors and gave the feud a higher profile victim whose family had influence and reach. One detail that added complexity to the story was Gilly's statement that his son might not have been the intended target that day. He described Cheese as being in the wrong place at the wrong time, implying the shooters had been aiming for someone else present at the scene. If that was true, it meant the killing was part of a different dispute that spiraled into a personal war for Gilly's family once Cheese was gone. For Noah, being linked to the killing of someone as connected as YNG Cheese marked a dangerous turn. Whether or not the rumors were entirely accurate, The perception was enough to make him a marked man. In the logic of street conflicts, taking out a figure tied to a prominent family brought heat from every direction: police, rivals, and anyone loyal to the victim. That cloud followed Noah into every move he made afterward, shaping the path that would lead to his final days. By late 2024, the talk around Noah's name in certain corners of North Philadelphia had shifted from cautious respect to outright notoriety, and it wasn't only because of the YNG cheese whispers. Street rumors began tying him to other killings, one of the most persistent being the murder of a local man known as Fat Dame. Dame was affiliated with an opposing crew, and his death earlier in the year had already sent shockwaves through their circle. The way the story spread, people claimed Noah had a direct hand in it, whether by pulling the trigger or lining up the move. In the streets, unconfirmed claims often carry as much weight as proven facts, and for Noah, these rumors only added to his emerging legend. They painted a picture of a teenager who not only stood his ground, but actively hunted rivals. Some of this perception came from his own work in the booth. In his drill tracks, there were bars that listeners said were self-snitching, direct or thinly veiled references to real incidents. He would drop nicknames of the dead, hint at locations, and weave these details into verses in a way that those tuned into the local scene could decode. This kind of lyrical boasting was a double-edged sword. It boosted his credibility among certain peers, marking him as someone with real experience in the life he rapped about. The more believable the story sounded, the more his audience treated him as authentic. Yet that same credibility painted a brighter target on his back. Every alleged body attached to his name meant another set of friends, family, or allies who might want revenge. In a city where payback could come quickly and without warning, it was a dangerous way to keep score. Noah seemed to lean into the danger. His presence in videos, the way he carried himself on social media, and the casual way he referenced violence all added layers to his persona. The legend of Joker OTV was no longer just about a mask or a gimmick. It was about an image of fearlessness backed by whispers of real bloodshed. That image was building faster than anyone could slow it down, and with each new rumor, the stakes of being Noah Scurry kept climbing. On January 13th, 2025, Noah made a move that would stand as his boldest public statement yet. That night, he dropped the official video for Swing My Door, a track that put his Joker OTV persona front and center. In the footage, Noah wore the now familiar Joker mask, surrounded by a crew of masked figures, each one openly holding firearms ranging from handguns to rifles. The setting was gritty, alleys, dimly lit rooms, and neighborhood backdrops, and every frame was designed to project intimidation. The lyrics pulled no punches. There were clear threats aimed at unnamed rivals, lines that some listeners believed referenced the killing of YNG Cheese, and coded phrases meant for those who could decipher them. To the casual viewer, it might have seemed like another drill video, but for those involved in the ongoing beefs, the message was direct and personal. In just 2 months, Swing My Door racked up over 2.6 million views. The reach was far beyond his immediate circle, spreading through YouTube recommendations, social media shares, and word of mouth. But the growing audience included people Noah likely didn't want watching. Law enforcement had long been tracking the connections between drill videos and real-world violence, warning that provocative visuals and lyrics could provoke immediate retaliation. Street observers knew the same, pointing out that videos like this often acted as open challenges, daring enemies to respond. The timing made the danger even sharper. Dropping such a video in the middle of an active feud was like pouring gasoline on a fire. The firearms on display, the mocking tone, and the willingness to invoke past killings all made Swing My Door a high-risk move. Whether Noah saw it as a way to cement his status, scare off rivals, or simply build his brand, the result was the same. The wrong eyes were locked in on him, and some of them were already planning what would happen next. The morning of January 14, 2025, began like any other school day for Noah Scurry, with the cold air settling over Feltonville and the streets still quiet. He stepped out of the back door of his family's row house on the 5,000 block of Rorer Street alongside his mother, ready for the short drive to Samuel Fells High School. It was just after 7 a.m., and the alley behind their home was empty, or at least it seemed that way. A white Jeep Grand Cherokee rolled slowly into view, its approach casual enough to not immediately raise alarm, but deliberate in its movements. As it drew closer, the doors flew open and multiple shooters jumped out, each armed and moving with purpose. Without warning, they opened fire, unleashing nearly 20 rounds in seconds. Bullets tore through the cold air, striking Noah repeatedly before he had a chance to react. His mother screamed, the sound carrying over the gunfire as neighbors bolted from their beds at the noise. Witnesses later described the chaos, the muzzle flashes lighting up the narrow space, the echo of shots bouncing off the brick walls, and Noah collapsing to the pavement. His mother rushed toward him, kneeling over his body as the gunmen returned to the Jeep and sped off, leaving behind shell casings and the sharp smell of gunpowder. It was clear to anyone watching that this was no random act, but a planned hit carried out with precision. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived. Noah was rushed to Albert Einstein Medical Center, but the extent of his wounds made survival impossible. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. At the scene, detectives recovered nearly 24 shell casings and immediately began canvassing for witnesses and security footage. The description of the getaway vehicle was broadcast citywide. Less than a day later, police located the white Jeep, abandoned just a few blocks from the scene. It had a damaged sunroof and visible bullet holes, suggesting it had been in other shootouts before. The vehicle was towed to an impound lot for forensic processing. Law enforcement sources told local media the shooting had all the hallmarks of a targeted execution. The number of rounds fired, the timing, and the coordination among the shooters left little doubt. News of Noah's killing spread quickly, and social media lit up with reactions. For those who only knew him as the polite, high-achieving student and basketball player, the shock was immediate. Posts poured in from classmates and teachers mourning the loss of a young man they believed was headed for success. But in other corners of the internet, the tone was different. Videos of Joker OTV's music, especially Swing My Door, began circulating alongside claims that the street life had finally caught up with him. Within days, Gilly the Kid made a public statement that added weight to the speculation. In an interview, he revealed that police had told him Noah was a prime suspect in the murder of his son, YNG Cheese. Gilly's words reframed the narrative for many. This wasn't just a talented student taken too soon, but a figure deeply involved in violent street feuds. Rumors also began circulating about who was behind the hit. Screenshots surfaced of alleged Instagram posts from Gilly's nephew, suggesting revenge had been taken for Cheese's death. One post reportedly read, "Get your rest, Cheese. That boy gas now," using slang to imply Noah's death was payback. While these claims spread quickly online, they were never confirmed by authorities. Police made no immediate arrests, and official statements stuck to the facts of the shooting. On the streets, though, the consensus was clear. Noah's killing was seen as street justice, a closing of the circle in a cycle of violence that had claimed multiple lives. The debate over his legacy, promising student or feared gunman, continued, but in the neighborhoods where the beef had started, few believed this would be the end of the story. In the days following Noah Scurry's death, Samuel Fells High School became a place heavy with confusion. Teachers who had praised his discipline now wrestled with the reality that he had been living a second life far from the classroom's order. Teammates who remembered his calm under pressure on the court struggled to reconcile that image with the masked figure holding rifles in drill videos. The hallway conversations were a mix of grief and disbelief, each person trying to make sense of how someone they knew so well in one setting could be tied to so much violence in another. Community voices weighed in, many pointing to the broader cycles of violence that have gripped North Philadelphia for years. Activists spoke about how even the most promising youth are not insulated from the pool of street culture when the environment is saturated with trauma, easy access to guns, and a lack of consistent intervention. The district attorney acknowledged that systemic gaps can leave young people slipping between the cracks, not for lack of talent or ambition, but because the streets often move faster than the institutions trying to help them. Noah's story became a case study in contrast. On paper, he was the kind of student schools hold up as a model: top grades, highest SAT score in the school, varsity athlete with potential for college ball. On the streets and online, he was Joker OTV, rumored hitter, and face of a rising generation of drill rappers whose lyrics blurred art and confession. Both versions existed side by side until they collided in that alley on January 14, 2025. The lesson is hard to ignore. The same skills that make a young man succeed in structured spaces: focus, confidence, quick thinking can also make him effective in dangerous ones. It's a reminder that talent alone doesn't change the terrain a person has to navigate. In the end, like folks say, the game don't play favorites. If you live by it, you know the rest. In Philadelphia, the line between promise and peril can fade in an instant. And for Noah Scurry, that line was crossed long before the morning his life ended.